Hello all and welcome, and I'm the MGTOW philosopher, and in this video I would like to talk about Otto Warmbier and what the Huffington Post had to say about him back in 2016. Now, the Huffington Post, as you may or may not know, is a despicable leftist rag. It's not worth the paper it's printed on, and I wouldn't even wipe my ass with it. It essentially insulted the poor young man, and the article read, "North Korea proves your white male privilege is not universal." What privilege are they talking about? So, okay, for all of you out there in the know, you're aware that white privilege is this red herring, it's bullshit created by the left to make it okay to essentially be racist and treat white people like crap, because to get their so-called quote-unquote privilege, they would have had to majorly oppress everybody else in the country. So now it's their turn to get some payback. However, it's not true in any way, shape, or form. There is no white privilege. There is privilege for everybody else, though, because they can say what they want and white people can't speak. If you want to test who is in charge, who has privilege, and who doesn't, just test out who you're allowed, essentially, to criticize. Well, you can't criticize blacks. You can't criticize Latinos. You can't criticize fat people, gay people, Islamic people, but it's okay to criticize white people. So I think that pretty well illustrates who has the privilege, and it ain't white people. So let's read this article, shall we? On the revocation of white privilege in America. Now keep in mind, this is early 2016. This was before Trump won and the turnaround began and people started to regain their senses. That's what the hell he gets. Good for him. My mother had uttered those words in her typical matter-of-fact tone one morning as she watched the news. Okay, so I guess that is the mother of the writer, who was someone named La Shah. What the fuck? Interesting name. Okay. So La Shah's mother continued to say that the person she was talking about, was Michael Fay, an 18-year-old from Ohio who had confessed to vandalizing cars in Singapore and was subsequently sentenced to 6 lashes from a rattan cane. Yeah, he got spanked. I would say 6 lashes from a rattan cane is no big deal. Okay, that's nothing. It continues to say, I was in 6th grade, and all I could imagine was how terrible the pain would be. Pfft, you pussy. Now we know you're a leftist right there, because you're such a wimp. You get all whimpery over 6 lashes from a fucking cane. Give me a break. Try getting stabbed. See how that feels, you wimp. My mother was unmoved at the thought, remarking, he earned that. So he is basically reminiscing about something that happened in his leftist youth, where his mother was remonstrating a boy, Michael Fay. Yeah, I remember this very well, who everybody freaked out because he was going to get 6 lashes. Ooh, big deal. It's not like they hung him. Anyway, it continues to say, I thought about my mother's words. Now we're back to the writer, and he's reminiscing about thinking about his mother's words. I thought about my mother's words a few days ago while watching video of 21-year-old Otto Warmbier, another man from Ohio who last week was convicted of subversion for stealing a propaganda banner in North Korea and sentenced to 15 years of hard labor. All right, first of all, there's no concrete evidence he did it. The only real evidence they have is a video that doesn't even show his face. So there's no way to identify who it actually is. What I think happened, every once in a while they want to arrest an American and make a example out of him, use it as a PR thing for their people and to make us lose face. So, they look around at whoever might be staying at whatever a hotel is designated for foreigners. Oh, that guy looks good. Yeah, do a little Google search on him. Oh, he comes from a well-to-do family. He's the one. Yeah, let's arrest him. I mean, you don't need any real reason to get arrested in North Korea. You're just white and you're from America. They'll just arrest you. And they'll trump up a case against you. That's what happened here. That's probably what happened. So let's continue, shall we? Just as in Faye's case, I was shocked by the severity of the punishment. Yeah. I mean, stealing a banner or a poster or something, even if he actually did do it, which I highly doubt, 15 years of hard labor, good Lord, that's crazy. I tried to imagine spending a decade and a half performing what North Korea state deems hard labor, and I can't. This person's a horrible writer, by the way. But I'm not 11 anymore. Now my mother's callous reaction to Michael Fay's sentence is my reaction to another young white man who went to an Asian country and violated their laws and learned that the shield of his cis white male identity provides here in America is not Teflon abroad. Okay, you moron, LaShaw, whatever your real name fucking is, you do realize that white people per capita get arrested more than black people. Are you aware of this? That black people actually get arrested less, okay? And if you, I mean, this is absurd. What is he talking about, this Teflon shield that white people have? Are you kidding me? There ain't no Teflon shield. What a moron. You're a moron, pal. Jesus Christ. As shocked as I am by the sentence handed down to Warmbier, I am even more shocked that a grown man, an American citizen, would not only voluntarily enter North Korea, but also commit what's been described a college-style prank. Okay, first of all, you leftist morons, it's people like you in the media that essentially encourage this kind of behavior because you talk about how all poor people are oppressed, and so in his mind, North Koreans must be oppressed people, and that the government lies and misrepresents these people being evil. Well, at the same time, you encourage bigger and bigger government, and that we should trust the government more in one sense, but on the other sense, no, they're giving all these warnings about North Korea. No. Just like Muslims aren't as bad as everybody's trying to say, the North Koreans aren't that bad. They're just an oppressed people. They're just suffering because South Korea is doing so well. Yeah, okay. Whatever you say. Yeah. To continue, that kind of reckless gall is an unfortunate side effect of being socialized first as a white boy. What? White boy? You might as well call a black person a nigger. I mean, you're essentially using white boy as a pejorative, and you're extremely racist. What does this mean, socialized as a white boy? What does socialized as a white boy mean? What does that mean exactly? Is it similar to being socialized as a thug if you're black? And by the way, what white privilege are we talking about? There is such a thing as black thugs and thug culture, but I'm not aware of any white boy culture that socializes people to have gall. Well, where is this white socialization? I'd like to see it. And then as a white man in this country, every economic, academic, legal, and social system in this country has for more than 3 centuries functioned with the implicit purpose of ensuring that white men are the primary benefactors of privilege. What? What the fuck are you talking about? What is this fucking guy talking about? First of all, America hasn't been a country for 3 centuries. It's been a country for 240 years, okay? And by the way, black people started their slavery of their own people. Blacks enslaved blacks, and they sold their own blacks. You want to blame slavery on anybody, blame it on black people. Don't blame it on whites. And as far as being benefactors of privilege, what are you talking about? White people don't have affirmative action. I go apply for a job. Uh-oh. Black guy applied too. Oh, well, he's going to get the job because he's black. Oh, or what about getting into college, for God's sake? Black people get like a plus 260 or something to their SAT scores, and Asian people who apply get minus 260. Now, what the hell? How is that white people get nothing? How is that a privilege? Excuse me, where is the privilege? Show me. You see, this is the problem with leftists. They make these broad general statements, but they don't give specifics. Yeah, I'm just going to make a broad sweeping statement, but I'm not going to get into anything specific. But you see, the devil's in the details. And if you don't get into anything specific, then you have nothing. You're just bloviating. Because if you give me something specific, then I can prove or disprove it. But that's why the left does not want to give specifics, because if it gives specifics, then I can disprove it very easily. But if you make broad, general, nebulous statements, that's kind of like ghost hunting or something, I can't really find it. I can't find what you're talking about. It continues to say, the kind of arrogance bred by that kind of conditioning is pathogenic. Oh, okay, big word for this guy, I think. Causing its host to develop a subconscious, it's subconscious, all right, yet no less obnoxious perception that the rules do not apply to him, or at least that their application is negotiable. I thought that was what black people and Hispanic people thought. Silly me. As they just walk across borders and ignore laws and just squat wherever they want and take jobs illegally. The laws don't apply to them. But you're talking about, oh, but white people, oh, they don't apply to white people, so you're really kidding me. How many people are breaking the law and doing criminal things? Per capita, it's far more black people and Hispanic people than white people, but somehow we're ignoring the laws? Oh, we're just ignoring laws in other countries, right? So our privilege doesn't take hold of us and make us do things that essentially cause us to ignore the law, unless it's in other countries. In America, we basically obey the law more than almost any other culture and race, but when we go to Asian countries, there's some kind of special exemption in our brain that kicks in and tells us to break the law there, even though we don't do it in America compared to everybody else. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. This writer's a moron. A pathogenic, this unconscious bias, nonsense we have that causes us to act in a way we're not aware of. Headline after headline has highlighted that Otto Warmbier is a student. His LinkedIn profile states that he is majoring in economics with a minor in global sustainability. And is the managing director of an alternative investment fund. A man reared in this country who studies the globe as a part of his higher education curriculum must have been at least passingly aware of the notoriously strained relationship between the United States and North Korea. Yeah, but I don't see you leftists lobbying to shut down tourism to that country, do you? No, they need the tourist dollars, these poor oppressed people. He continues to say, surely he had read the stories of Jeffrey Fowle and Matthew Miller, other white American men arrested in North Korea for petty crimes who were subsequently sentenced to hard labor. Oh, yeah, this is blaming the victim. I don't believe that a lot of these people were guilty. And let's be honest here. North Korea, just about everything is a crime. That's why they want white people. This is what I said in my last video where I talked about my video on Otto Warmbier where he died and the left laughed at him. North Korea is like a honey trap. It's a sucker bet. It's a trap. It's just a way to lure in white people so they can arrest them and make America lose face. Oriental people, Asian people are very big on that. I don't know why Americans don't get that. And I don't know why the American government hasn't closed all tourism to this country, because they're our enemy. They're abducting our people, accusing them of fake crimes, and sending them to hard labor. He continues to say, yeah, I'm willing to bet my last dollar that he was aware of the political climate in that country. Irrelevant. It was legal to travel there. He decided to travel there. He got abducted, in my opinion, and held hostage and beaten up. Got brain injuries from being there, and they put him into a fucking coma. Then they sent him home on humanitarian grounds because they felt he would die soon, and they didn't want him to die in North Korea because it would look too bad for them. So send him back to America. He's going to die anyway. Yeah. The height of privilege told him that North Korea's history of making examples out of American citizens who dare to challenge their rigid legal system in any way was no match for his alabaster American privilege. I thought it was white privilege. Now it's American privilege. Well, by your estimation, then any American would have that privilege, so it's not white privilege. Now, it continues to say, when you can watch a white man who entered a theater and killed a dozen people come out unscathed, you start to believe you're invincible. What does this have to do with anything? That's a totally different argument, a totally different subject. Now you're conflating that. How many? Geez, since 2001, since 9/11, there have been more than 30,000 terrorist attacks across the world by Muslims. How many have been by white people who are non-Muslim? He's taken some isolated incident of a nutjob white person going crazy and shooting people and conflating it for some reason with Otto. Yeah, all white people are the same. All white people suffer some kind of privilege. Anytime a white person does something wrong, he's doing it because of white privilege. It couldn't possibly be because he's mentally ill. Oh, no. And when you see a white man taken to Burger King in a bulletproof vest after he killed 9 people in a church, yeah, a church that was a no-gun zone, you have no guns here. Well, that's where criminals go. And again, another mentally ill person. You learn that the world will always protect you. No. You learn that mentally ill people do crazy shit. This person is conflating things that are totally different arguments and totally different incidences, and the only connection is race. Talk about racist. This motherfucker is super, super racist. Coming from a country filled with citizens who lambast black victims of state-sanctioned violence. Lambast? Black victims? The majority of crimes are committed by black people. they commit the crime. And if there's any violence meted out against them that isn't in the course of them being arrested and resisting arrest, it's by their fellow black people. But nobody talks about black-on-black crime, which is where the majority of killings come from among black people, is by other blacks. Oh, no, we can't talk about that because that doesn't fit the narrative of the left trying to villainize the white man. Ay, ay, ay. So, coming from a country filled with citizens who lambast black victims of state-sanctioned violence by telling us that if we obey the law, we wouldn't have to face the consequences, Warmbier should have listened. Again, there is zero evidence that he did anything wrong. The only evidence is of a very grainy, scratchy, fucked up video that just shows somebody, and they can't even tell who this person is. There's no picture of a face. It's so crappy. It taking a banner off a wall. They don't know who did it. And by the way, the banner, it never showed up anywhere. So he took a banner, but it never showed up anywhere. Wouldn't they have found it in his luggage or something? Huh? Oh, no, the banner just miraculously vanished. I guess he somehow smuggled it out, had somebody else smuggle it out. Yeah, this banner, this poster, it's worth maybe 10 cents or $1 or something. Somebody else smuggled it out. It just miraculously disappeared. I would think the key evidence would be the banner he took, but it wasn't on him. Amazing. How interesting. And the only real evidence they have is a picture, a video that essentially doesn't show the face, and in its crappy black and white garbage video. Would I trust that evidence from a country like North Korea? No. Not at all. Continues to say, Warmbier should have listened. If he had obeyed North Korea's laws, he would be home now. He did obey their laws. I'm telling you, it was a setup. In fact, if he had heeded the U.S. State Department's strong advisement against travel to North Korea, he would be home right now. Okay, so it's his fault. Oh, it's his fault. Yeah, he got arrested by the North Koreans, and then he got beat up and tortured for months and months and months until they cracked him in the head too hard. And he suffered a cardiac arrest, which cut off blood flow to his brain, and then he suffered a brain death and became a vegetable, and then they sent him home when they knew he was going to die. Yeah, that's all because he decided to go to North Korea. It wasn't the fault of the people who put him in prison and cracked him in the head with a billy club, was it? And if Eric Garner is to be blamed for his own death for selling loose cigarettes, this is the guy that got choked out for selling loosies. or Sandra Bland is dead because she failed to signal when changing lanes. Yeah, well, okay, first of all, this is a little different here. The guy that was selling loosies, there were like half a dozen cops, and this big, fat, giant guy was resisting. Now, the officer that subdued him shouldn't have used a chokehold. We can all agree on that. He wasn't alone. His life was not at risk. And the guy was saying he couldn't breathe. So that officer was in the wrong. Okay, so that guy wasn't his fault. What? I mean, yeah, he shouldn't have been selling loosies, and he did resist arrest. So there are mitigating circumstances there, actually. So he did contribute in some way to his own death. And Sandra Bland failed to signal when changing lanes. Yeah, that's kind of her fault that happened. She should have signaled. All right. But, there's no proof that Otto Warmbier did this. And by the way, these deaths and these incidences were directly related at that exact moment. That exact moment in time, they directly contributed at that moment. Otto Warmbier didn't die until a month and a half later after being tortured for months and months in prison. That's hardly the same as I didn't change lanes, that I moved and I died. Or I was selling loosies and I resisted the arrest, and I was a big, giant, fat guy, so I had some strength, and I fought like a freaking monster, and I died because I got choked out. And consequently, that guy had an underlying heart condition or something like that, and it contributed to his death. So his being such a fat slob contributed to his death. I mean, honestly, they're trying to conflate things that are totally unrelated. The only thing they have in common is someone broke the law and died, but it's how they died that is important and when they died. So in the two cases they talked about, both people died at the exact moment they were arrested. Now, this argument would hold water if he had somehow resisted when they came to arrest him, and he had resisted so much they got hit in the head or something during the altercation where he was resisting, and he died from that. But that's not what happened. He went with them peacefully. And then went through a kangaroo court trial, and then was found guilty. And then later, over months and months, he was beaten and cracked in the head. Duh! There's no correlation between these events at all. And this idiot writer trying to conflate them, well, he's an idiot. What a friggin' moron. Okay, so Sandra Bland is there because she failed to signal when changing lanes. And Otto Warmbier is now facing the national autonomy of a country which has made its hatred for and vendetta against America unequivocally clear, which also would mean they are heavily biased and you can't trust whatever evidence they give. And they gave no concrete evidence of any kind, not to mention the banner they didn't have the banner. It wasn't found on him. And the video, you couldn't see the face of who took the banner. So I would call that reasonable doubt, and then some. And while I don't blame his parents for pressuring the State Department to negotiate his release, I wonder where they were when their son was planning a trip to the DPRK. Well, Otto Warmbier at that time was traveling in China, okay, and then on a whim, now this I don't get. I do think he was stupid for going to North Korea. I do think the decision was stupid, that is. And he just on a whim decided to travel from China to North Korea because it was so close, and he saw an advertisement, and that advertisement spelled his death, of course. Didn't they impress upon him the hostile climate that awaited him? My guess is he might not have talked with them beforehand. Who knows? He's a 21-year-old kid in China. You know, he just decides on a whim to go. He may not have even talked to his parents beforehand. Didn't they rear him to respect law and order? Really? This is coming from a leftist working for the Huffington Post who can't even use logic and reason and who encourages violence from the left, makes excuses for violent leftists, and you are talking about respect for law and order? Really? Oh, my God. To continue, what a mind-blowing moment it must have been to realize after 21 years of being pedestaled by the world. Oh, my God. Oh, Lord. So he was on a pedestal, huh, because he was white. Being white, he was on some kind of pedestal. The only people I know that are put on a pedestal are the oppressed people, like the black people and the brown people, or the Hispanic people, gay people, lesbians, and people who say they're transgendered, and specifically females. They're definitely put on a pedestal. But white people, when have they ever been put on a pedestal? Not for a long fucking time. Certainly not in my lifetime. What the fuck you talking about, you moron? Hey, he's just spouting out talking points from theory of race and gender, his theory of race and gender class from college with his liberal nutjob professor talking about horse shit. Huh, white people are put on pedestals. I ain't never been put on a goddamn pedestal. I sure would like to be put on one. It must be great. But I have no idea what that feels like because this never happened to me, you moron. Of being pedestaled by the world simply because your DNA coding produced the favorable phenotype that such favor is not absolute. No, there's no favor. Unless you're a feminist, or gay, or black, or a poor Hispanic person, then there's favoritism. Then you get lots of welfare, and you get lots of victim points, and people go boo-hoo for you. Oh, my God. This fucker is so flippant in this next sentence, the way he talks. I just like to punch this Lasha, whatever the fuck his name is, in the face. What a bummer, he says, to realize that even the State Department, with all its influence and power, cannot assure your pardon. What a wake-up call it is to realize that your tears are met with indifference. This guy's a scumbag. He's a total scumbag. So, he really does think that white people are evil and that they are indifferent to the cries of the poor people and the poor oppressed in the world. And now you're getting some of the indifference that you have put out there into the world. Ha, 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 ha. So he's, oh my God, unbelievable. He is essentially gloating right now. He is gloating. This Lasha, this person writing for the crap HuffPost garbage periodical, he's gloating. He's laughing that this guy got arrested and put in jail and is going to suffer a year and a half of punishment before he gets put into a coma by a crack in the head. Yeah, you're a real humanitarian there, buddy. As I've said, Living 15 years. Oh, he didn't live 15 years, pal. Yeah, I bet you're regretting having written this, you moron. Unfortunately, our society is so liberal now, so leftist, that you'll still have a career after the kid has already died. But you should not, because you're scum, you're garbage, you're human filth. You should never work in media again. As I said, living 15 years performing manual labor in North Korea is unimaginable, but he deserves it. Yes, unimaginable, but he deserves it for being dumb enough to go to North Korea and be proved guilty by trumped-up charges with no evidence, no real evidence, and the stolen property was never even found. You would think that he went to such care to supposedly steal this banner as a prank that he would have actually taken it with him, but somehow it just disappeared. Imagine that. But so he's going to a place I know I'm unwelcome and violating their laws. You have no evidence he violated their laws, and even if he did, let's not be morally relativistic, you scumbag. It is morally reprehensible to throw somebody in jail for 15 years for supposedly stealing a fucking poster. I'm a black woman. Oh, well, there we go. And there's where she has that ethnic-sounding name, LaShaw. She's a black woman. So she's got tons of virtue. She's the oppressed. She's a woman, and she's black. No wonder she can be so high and mighty, because the only person that's been put on a pedestal is this black cunt. I'm a black woman, though. Yeah, that means you're the one on the pedestal, cunt. The hopeless fear Warmbier now experiences is my daily reality. It is? You work for the Huff Post, baby. You work for the Huffington Post as a writer, one of the most useless jobs in the world. Where one of the most useless jobs where there's no market right now. There's no real demand for journalists. But you got a job as a journalist. And you're being paid well, no doubt. But you're living in a country, you're living in fear. What's your daily reality is fear? If you're living in any fear, it's in your own fucking head, because you are the most privileged person on earth. You're black and you're a woman. Feminism protects you, and black lives, black people, the whole black culture, the whole fear of offending black people protects you. You shouldn't be living in fear, you dumb bitch. In a country where white people like him are willingly oblivious to my suffering. You're suffering? You have a full-time job where you get to sit down and spout blather all day, and people take you seriously, and you get paid a lot of money for it. I wouldn't call that you being an oppressed person, a poor oppressed person. I wouldn't call that you being oppressed or suffering at all. What suffering have you had, huh? Even as they are complicit in maintaining the power structures which ensure that their supremacy at my expense. So how are they holding any supremacy in America because of you? Now, the left is holding, yeah, there is some truth to what she's saying, but not for the reasons that she thinks. The very power structure that is in place right now is a leftist, socialist, cultural Marxist, economic Marxist one, and it does stay in power because of you. But some white people who are pressing you, well, not really, unless you consider all the welfare they're giving you oppression. But that doesn't exactly fit the definition of oppression. That's the definition of privilege, you dumb bitch. And you probably got your job because you're black and you're a woman. What suffering have you had to endure? Tell me, please. I'm looking at your picture, and you look like a fat slob, so you clearly haven't missed a meal. I bet you have a home, and you have a car, and you probably make decent bank. Because the bitch that owns Huffington Post is rich. It's just a propaganda rag, and you get paid very well to write your blather, and you're talking about being some poor suffering person? Well, of course you are. Because you want to virtue signal and get victim points. And you want to establish that you are one of the oppressed, so that way you can call him, the white guy who hasn't suffered and who has made you suffer, evil. And you get to validate your victimhood, and because you're a victim, you can point out what a scumbag this kid is. Yeah, okay. People like this LaShaw person really piss me off. She is clearly a privileged person, and she uses her race and her race card to get privilege. But she talks about being somehow a suffering person, a suffering, oppressed person, when she's clearly in no way suffering or oppressed. And she shows what a scumbag she is by not caring what this poor kid is going through because of his race. So she is a racist. She has made it very clear that he is a racist. She is ascribing certain qualities and traits to him that are associated completely with his race and saying that he should be suffering because of his race. It's his own fault because of his race, because of his upbringing, because he's white, because he has this unconscious bias that makes him flout the laws of other countries. It's his fault because he's a white man and now he's got to suffer the consequences of being white. Good for him suffering. Good for North Korea for making him suffer. This woman should be fired and she should be put on Skid Row where she belongs, and then she will encounter what actual suffering is like as she is possibly gang raped. Of course, this big fat ugly hoe, who would want her, right? Maybe a desperate Muslim rape gang of oppressed people that she was formerly protecting. And then after they rape her, she can apologize for them by saying, oh, well, the poor oppressed people, they don't know what they were doing. But of course, the white guy, he knew what he was doing, and it's all his fault. It's not the fault of the corrupt regime that probably set him up just so they could arrest an American and make America look bad. No, it's not their fault. They cracked him over the head and tortured him and put him into a coma and eventually killed him. No, it's not their fault. Lasha, I hope you go to hell, a special liberal hell, where your flesh is feasted on 24/7 by tiny little devils, and then your flesh grows back, and then they cut little pieces off again, and they grow back again and again for eternity, and you're devoured for all time. I feel sorry for this Otto Warmbier. I do think that he was very foolish to travel to North Korea. But if you want to blame anybody, you can blame people like this Lasha, who spread the poison of liberalism to young people like him and get it into their head that these countries of poor people are just people who have been oppressed by richer countries. It's not their fault, and they have lots and lots of virtue because of the fact that they're poor. This is what happens when you take being poor and turn it into a virtue. Then you look at any third world country out there and you associate the people in that country with being virtuous. And then you think it's okay to travel there because those people are not as bad as the government has painted them to be. And you find out that they're much worse. So if anybody is to blame, it is liberals like Lasha and not any white privilege that drummed it into his head that he was somehow above the law. I think clearly if you read the story, he doesn't believe he was. And if you look at the evidence is wanting. And it looks to me like he was framed. It was a trumped-up case. Obviously, 100% fabricated. And that's why you shouldn't travel to North Korea. That's the only point I agree upon, is he shouldn't have went there. But when you got leftists like this woman telling people all the time that being poor means you're being oppressed and that you're a victim, and victims have virtue, and thereby they're not that bad, and in fact, they're some of the best people in the world. Utter nonsense. And this is the crazy world of the left. I am the MGTOW philosopher, and I wish you a good day. Take care.